Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Good afternoon. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party and the County Chair of Suffolk County Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Welcome back to Let the Record Show. Well, Jesse, the Chinese curse is, may you live in interesting times. And I say to you, we're living in interesting times. We're living through dangerous times and deeply sad and troubling times. The former President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, has been indicted by a federal grand jury for 37 counts, felony counts, about mishandling or retaining unlawfully documents and obstruction of justice. Now, let me give you my thoughts on this matter. And I'm surely not the only person who believes this way. In fact, a large number of people, our fellow citizens, feel the same way. This is an indictment that never should have been prosecuted. This is a case that never should have been put into the grand jury. This is a matter, it's a civil matter, Jesse. It's not a criminal matter. It's document retention, and it falls under the Presidential Records Act, which is purely an administrative civil matter. They criminalized it by trying to bring in the so-called Espionage Act of 1917, which has to do with giving aid and comfort to the enemy and undercutting and selling out to the enemy. Trump has nothing to do with that, whereas somebody else we may talk about a little later may have something to do with giving aid and comfort and having a relationship with our adversaries or foreign governments. But this man is not accused of that. They're going after him on a merely ministerial act. Now, will I stipulate that maybe he should have given back the documents earlier? Yeah, he could have done that. And should he have not made certain representations that they were all there when he didn't examine every box? Sure, but this is not serious matters. This is not national security. This is not the national interest. This is not undercutting the interests of the American people or of our government. And it shouldn't have been prosecuted. And by making this prosecution, in my humble opinion, Jesse, they are continuing the divisiveness in this country. They've divided this country literally in half. Half the people want Trump back as president. Half the people have no problem getting Biden back in office. Actually, I think the numbers are less than half for Biden. Most people think he's unfit for office based on his mental capacity and his alleged dealings with foreign governments and the influence peddling allegations against him and his family. So, what do you say about this issue?
Your Honor, it's great to be back with you after I was ill last week, and we wake up to this moment. And I've been doing interviews on this all week. This is nothing more than the weaponization of the federal law enforcement agencies. It's a weaponization of a national institution like the Department of Justice. As you said, this should never have been brought to case as a criminal matter. It is a civil matter in its origin and its origin and its substance. But let's not forget how this all began. This began with the unprecedented raid of the home of a president, a former president, and it was done without notification to his lawyers. It was again a circus act by the Department of Justice. What we see here is that there's two levels of government, two levels of justices here in America. There's a level of justice for Trump and Republicans. And I say that because remember that it was this Department of Justice that referred to those parents who would dare to raise questions at a school board meeting. They were described as domestic terrorists by the Department of Justice, the Democratic Department of Justice. And of course, there are those for Democrats and those of the elite, the Jeffrey Epsteins of the world, the Hillary Clintons of the world, 33,000 emails. I never heard of bleaching a server to erase records forever until until the case of Hillary Clinton.
And smashing cell phones and physically destroying
smashing cell phones. Absolutely, sir. This is nothing more that's breaking down the confidence in America's institutions by on behalf of the American people. This never should have been brought. And what's going to happen if they think that they're going to surround Donald Trump with these politically based charges. And let's not forget, we had, Bragg, who will allow murderers, rapists, and sex offenders and robbers go free with no bail and not to prosecute them and such. But he brings a tax criminal charge against President Trump several months ago, after years in which the Department of Justice and FEC had abandoned their investigation or concluded their investigation. This is a sad time for America. It's sad for our institutions. It's sad for our politics. And more importantly, it's sad for the American citizens. But I believe, and what I've been hearing here in Suffolk and throughout Long Island, is that people are angry. They're angry, and this is galvanizing the people against the Bidens, against the Clintons, against the deep state, against the elitists that are running this government. They raise our taxes, they raise our inflation, they make us dependent upon foreign energy, and yet they are, blatantly trying to take out a potential challenger for public office like we would in any third world country. That's going to stop, and I think that fortunately, or unfortunately, the way you want to look at it, Donald Trump is probably the only individual that can sustain this type of aggression against him.
Well, it's very interesting. They always say that Donald Trump was a threat to democracy. He was subverting the institutions of our country. Donald Trump didn't use his Justice Department or the FBI to go after Hillary Clinton after it was perfectly clear that she had broken the law based on the rendition by Comey, the FBI director, who then unlawfully, by the way, announced that no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute the case, and it was being dropped. First of all, he's the FBI director. He's merely a fact gatherer. He's an investigator. He's not the prosecutor. It was not his decision to make. And yet he got up there, read a bill in particular, showed all the violations of law and concerns about her conduct, and yet he got away with it, and he shouldn't have done that, and he should have been called out for that. That was an inappropriate act by the FBI director at the time, Comey. And Trump never tried to weaponize the Justice Department, the FBI, against Hillary Clinton. So give him credit. Now, there's an article that literally just broke in the Atlantic magazine, and it came out this morning. And one of the authors is Andrew Weissman, and Weissman, as you recall, is one of the guys from the whole, Trump impeachment problems and collusion. He's been embedded in all the anti-Trump stuff from the very, very beginning. And Weissman writes this article, and he said, well, the ace in the hole, fundamentally, that Jack Smith, the special counsel, has, if he doesn't like the way the case is going in Florida, if the case is fully prosecuted in Florida, then they can bring up charges against Trump before a federal grand jury in New Jersey, because allegedly some of the bad acts that Trump allegedly committed occurred in New Jersey at the country club. So they're constantly looking for a place, a venue where they can go after him. And I think it's awful.
It is awful. That's basically judge shopping or court shopping right there. And that just demonstrates the problem with their case, the fact that this is a criminal case. And, you brought up the Clinton emails and how they, it was not Comey's decision. It was not his role, not his prerogative to decide what could be prosecuted or not. That's with the U.S. AG. But let's not forget, who was meeting with Bill Clinton on the tarmac in Los Angeles? Not only it was Loretta Lynch, the U.S. Attorney General, that was meeting with Bill Clinton in 2016 in the midst of this investigation.
But Jesse, you have to take them at their word. They were just talking about their grandchildren. Remember that?
Of course, yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's frightening.
And you know what? And why not take Donald Trump and every other Republican or every other American that may have made a mistake by checking the wrong box on their income tax forms or in their civil service forms or any matter? So why not take their word for it?
Well, let's be clear. You mentioned checking a box in IRS. This Biden administration has just hired, is in the process of trying to hire 87,000 new IRS agents to go against the so-called ultra-rich who aren't paying their fair share. Number one, there aren't that many ultra-rich. And number two, you don't need 87,000 people to do that. Why don't they take the 87,000 people that they want to put on the federal payroll and put them on the Border Patrol payroll and protect our border? What do you say about that?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Let's go to that 88,000 new IRS agents, because I made this point on several venues this past week. I think what Donald Trump is right is that they could do this to him. It doesn't mean that it stops with him. It means if they can do it to him, it can do it to anybody. And the mechanism and the vehicle to do that would be these 88,000 new IRS agents. They're not going to go after the elite, ultra rich. Those guys and ladies are lawyered up. They have CPAs upon CPAs upon CPAs. They have shell corporations upon shell corporations. They're going to go after the small mom and pop businesses on our main streets. They're going to go after hardworking families that are dealing with the burden of this Biden inflation that's being thrust upon them. It's costing us, another $250 to $300 more a month just to survive. That's who they're going to go after. And I'm happy that regardless where you sit on the debt ceiling deal, that at the very least the Republicans were able to defund to several hundreds of millions of dollars, the funding for those 88,000 IRS agents, because that's the next step. After they go after Trump, they're going to go after other Republican elected officials, other office holders, other potential candidates, and the American people are going to be mixed in that cadre right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have Councilman Vernikov, who's running to the New York City Council. She is a very important member of the City Council. She's a Republican conservative. We'll be talking to her about running for office, why she loves being a councilwoman, and what she's trying to contribute. And Jesse, you and I have been talking about having a two-party system and why it's so important that the City Council of New York has representation from intelligent, moderate people like Councilmember Vernikov. We'll be back in a minute. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a minute.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for an Oikos remix. Like a crunchy storm of sea salt praline pretzels, dark chocolate, and butter toffee, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 Oikos remix varieties with epic mix-ins and 11 grams of complete protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See remixyogurt.com.
Campfire season's back, and that means s'mores. But when you're at home treating yourself, take them over ice with Dunkin' S'mores Cold Brew Concentrate. And suddenly you're always treating yourself. The home with Dunkin' is where you want to be. Click or tap the banner to shop now.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back. This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the county chair of the Suffolk County Party, as well as being the vice chair of the state Republican Party. We're honored and privileged indeed to have one of the leaders of the New York City Council, a common sense, centrist, elected official, a great legislator, Ina Vernikov. Councilwoman, welcome to Let the Record Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you're up for re-election. In fact, when does early voting start? Has it started yet?
Early voting starts this Saturday, June 17th until June 25th, and primary, the main day, primary election is June 27th.
All right. Now, let me tell you my view, and Jesse and I discuss this all the time, council member. I'm a Democrat. I'm the House Democrat. Jesse is Republican. But both of us strongly believe in a two-party system. And the problem is both of us believe, and Jesse, of course, can speak for himself, is the failure of having a real two-party system in the city of New York and the state of New York is detrimental to the interests of the people of New York City and New York State. We need strong countervailing forces against the extremists who have taken over the Democratic Party. So I think you need to elect as many Republicans as you can as a balance against this tidal wave of extreme radical progressivism, which is a threat to our economy, our public safety, and quality of life. What say you, Council Member?
I wholeheartedly agree, and I think we have an amazing opportunity in this election now to elect more Republicans into the city council, and we have a real chance, I'm not just saying it. We actually looked at several seats on the council that can, with hard work can really be, taken over by Republicans, and there are some really good candidates running in some of these seats. And I think, people need to understand how important it is to come out to vote, because everyone likes to complain about issues. And I'm not even talking about the big political issues. I'm talking about the small issues, local issues. I think the Republicans do it better. I think we really, really care about our constituents, not just the polls and the votes. And, I think this election, we're expecting a low voter turnout. So, if you want a Republican in the council, you need to come out to vote. If there's a primary or there's a general election, I think it's important that people understand that it's not just enough to complain. You need to vote.
Well, that's exactly right. And I will tell you, and I want to raise a procedural issue with you and then a very important public policy issue with you. My concern is you've been a leader of the city council, not just amongst the Republicans, but in the council itself with all the members, and you've been a voice of reason and common sense for the whole city. And I will tell you, as someone who taught for about 9 or 10 years as an adjunct law professor at City University Law School, part of Queens College, one of the 4 law schools I taught at over the years, I was very proud to be a member of that faculty because you had good working class and middle class people going to that school who were educating themselves to try to work for public service in the public interest. That school now seems to me to be taken over by extreme leftists, anti-Semites, and anti-Israeli. And I'm shocked by what happened. You've been the leader of that fight. Would you explain to our listeners about that, please?
Well, unfortunately, it's been a problem at the City University of New York as a whole, and it's been a problem for a very long time. As far as I can remember, in 2015, this situation with anti-Semitism and anti-Israel rhetoric started. The problem that we have, I think one of the biggest problems at the City University of New York is a group called Students for Justice in Palestine. We have an organization who did a study, a correlation study between SJP and anti-Semitism and anti-Israel rhetoric, and they found that the more active SJP presence on a campus, the more anti-Semitism and anti-Israel rhetoric on a campus. So I think that's the most problematic group. They incite violence, and then they hold rallies outside of the school, which result in physical violence against Jewish students, Jewish pro-Israel students, Zionists. They call for Zionist professors to be out of CUNY. That's actually what happened in 2015 outside of Hunter College. There was a rally where they yelled about defunding the police. They yelled Zionists out of CUNY. They really believe that Zionists, which, I think they mean Jews. I'm pretty sure they mean Jews. To be out of CUNY, should not teach at CUNY, should not go to CUNY. We should not have any Zionists, which we should not have any Jews at the City University of New York. And it's really become a prevalent, pervasive problem. They've kind of created this hostile environment, and the issue is that the administration has really failed to do anything about it. And so it's festered, and the result of that is something like the speaker that we heard a couple of weeks ago, the chosen commencement speaker, who was unanimously elected by the student body and put on this pedestal and given this platform, which she totally used for her politics, which is unacceptable.
Well, I agree with you. Jesse, your turn.
Councilman Vernikov, it was a pleasure to meet you previously, and for the work that you are. You're a Republican firebrand that has really, set the city council on fire and brought a lot of issues. Some people may say mundane issues, but important issues for the people's daily lives. Your Republican bona fides are fantastic. Voting against, speed cameras and red light cameras, and of course, having Donald Trump Jr. do a robocall for you during your first election. We need, as a two-party system, especially in deep blue New York City, we need voices like you to raise common sense initiatives, policies, and call out. You've seen it firsthand, and you see it through your community, the failure of communism and socialism. We need individuals who are articulate, who are bright, and who are unafraid to speak truth to power. So maybe speak about some of if you could, how you navigate those waters in the city council, being, one of us, a growing minority, but a small minority nonetheless in that body to protect your constituents.
Yeah, I mean, it's you could imagine it's not an easy job. First of all, I think we have two main jobs, kind of two roles. We have our district, which we need to take care of. I represent a district of close to 180,000 people. And there are hundreds of complaints every day about local issues. And then we also have to be the voice of our community. We have to legislate, propose bills, pass bills in the council. And one of the things that I'm very proud of in terms of my work this past year is actually, it's kind of hard for Republicans to pass bills, right? But what I did this past year was I helped get a bill off the floor that I think would be very detrimental to the safety of New Yorkers, not just in my district, but all over New York City. There was a bill that was proposed which would ban the ability of landlords to check the criminal background history of tenants. You probably heard of it.
Yes, I think it's a great bill.
Oh, you thought it was a great bill?
No, it was a great opposition to that kind of.
Great opposition to that, though. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay,
yes,
I didn't think so. I didn't think you would think it was a great bill.
No, not my friend Jesse. No, believe me.
No.
I mean, I have to tell you that this was really not even. It was totally a bipartisan issue because I've had people from all over the city, from all kinds of communities, especially from the Black and Brown community, from Hispanic community, from the Asian community, call me because their council members wouldn't take their call, I guess, according to what they said. But I had galvanized all these communities. A lot of them were Democrats. When they heard about this bill, they were totally against it. They helped me galvanize. They helped me get people to come out against it. Leaders of different communities, they came to the hearing, they testified. We created a lot of noise around it. I was on Fox News about 4 times on this. It was in all local papers. And it's out. I mean, we're not talking about it. It never came back to the floor. I think even for some Democrats, it created an issue because their electorate was divided on this issue and they have elections coming up, so they didn't want it. And I think this bill is such a great example because I'll tell you that I think if I didn't create noise around that bill, it would have just passed without – it's kind of like under the rug because when people don't know about something, they can't make noise about it. And I made it my business to make sure that people are aware. I got a lot of pushback from my colleagues in the council, especially when I posted their phone numbers, their public phone numbers. But I didn't really care because I thought it was so important and I thought it would be so harmful to New Yorkers if a landlord couldn't check the criminal background of someone moving into their building. So it was so important for me to make sure everyone knows about it. I posted videos on it and I can't even explain to you how many people called me and reached out to me about this and fought alongside me. And I think it's just a great example because I think that we need to do more of that. When something like this comes to the floor or is introduced, we need to be loud about it. We can't just be afraid of speaking out because somebody on the council is our friend or we don't want to be unpopular. We have to make sure to speak out and let people know what's coming to the floor. People don't know. They're busy with their lives. And they don't know until something like this passes it and it's in the New York Post, like, hey, we passed this crazy bill, and then they complain. But if they know about it, they can actually do something about it in advance. They can come to a hearing.
That's real leadership. I want to tell our listeners we're talking to Council Member Ina Vernikov, who's the duly elected Republican and conservative council person. What district geographic bounds do you have when people need to know how to vote?
I represent the 48th Council District. It encompasses Manhattan Beach, Brighton Beach, Sheepshead Bay, Gravesend, and parts of Midwood up until Avenue N with the new map.
Well, it's very important. I have to tell our listeners this. It's very, very important that they come out, they vote either on primary day, which is the 27th of June, or they start to vote in the early voting, which starts on this Saturday. And this primary is particularly important, going back to what Councilwoman Vernikov and Chairman Garcia and I have been talking about, having an effective two-party system. Now, why did I want to have Councilwoman Vernikov on this show? Because she's being challenged for the Republican nomination in a Republican primary. Now, I am telling you, as a House Democrat, I want more Republicans in the City Council to get common sense against the radical progressive left that are hurting our city and our state. Now, in a Republican primary, I'm hopeful and confident that Councilwoman Vernikov is going to win the Republican primary. But heaven forbid if she doesn't win the Republican primary, because she's running against a very well-financed person against her, she has a conservative line, which means in November, you're going to have a three-way race. You're going to have a Democratic candidate, you have a Republican candidate, you have a conservative candidate, and you can split the common sense vote, and some radical Democrat can come in and win that seat. And that's a seat where the people of those communities are entitled to have common sense representation, and Councilwoman Vernikov has demonstrated that. So why anybody would want to vote against her in a primary, it makes absolutely no sense at all. They should be out there getting all their friends and their family to vote for her if you want to have a two-party system that works. If you don't want to give up on the dream of having balanced government, then that's a different discussion. But if you care about balanced government and real leadership, and Councilwoman Vernikov has laid out for you her leadership and how she rallied people against a stupid piece of legislation on a city council floor, then don't vote or vote the wrong way. What say you, Jesse?
I just wanted to add my voice to that. As a Republican chairman of, the 24th largest county in the country, one that we have switched from Democrat to Republican through the legislature and the district attorneys and countywide offices, Councilwoman Vernikov is the type of Republican that we look for and we know we need, not only here in Long Island, but in places like New York City and throughout the state and throughout our system. For those Republicans that are listening in on this show, use every tool you have. Early voting, absentee voting, certainly vote in person, either in early voting or the day of the election, because Ina Vernikov is the type of Republican we need to maintain our two-party system, to protect the communities of the 48th district, and to bring common sense Republican principles to the city hall that is too far overrun by progressives and socialists. This is a call to arms to elect a great Republican who's articulate, bright, feisty, aggressive, and someone who's unafraid to speak truth to power and get things done.
Well, Councilwoman Vernikov, on behalf of Chairman Garcia and myself, we deeply appreciate you coming on. We wish you every good wish. The city of New York needs you. Your communities need you. Everyone in the 48th Councilmanic District should be out there supporting Councilwoman Vernikov for renomination in the Republican primary and re-election in November. God bless you, and God bless this great country, Councilwoman. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me on.
This is Let the Record Show.
We're shipping Mother's Day gifts with a rapid-fire round of questions. Ready?
Yes. My gift. Can you pack it?
Yep.
Ship it?
Yes.
Guarantee it?
Of course.
Oh, send gift baskets?
For sure.
Protect electronics? Dog-proof it? Return it if they hate it?
Yes, no, and yeah.
Are you the UPS store?
Hey, we have a winner!
Visit the upsstore.com/guarantee for full details. Most locations are independently owned. Product, services, prices, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Visit a store today.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. This is Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my good friend, esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the county chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party, as well as the vice chair of the state party. Now, we just had Anna Vernikov, who's a councilwoman from the 48th District in Brooklyn, who's a Republican conservative. She's running in a primary. It's very important that people come out and vote. If you believe in a two-party system, you need to have members of the city councils and the county legislatures and the state legislature and the Congress who are members of the Republican Party. Very important that they come out. Now, Jesse, I just want to make a few comments about the Trump indictment. Excuse me, and we'll shift gears. The trial, so far, it looks like it's all going to take place in Florida. And they're already trying to attack the judge, saying she was appointed by Trump. I didn't see anybody attacking the judges in the District of Columbia that gave all those self-serving rulings against Trump in the investigation of Trump, where they were all appointed by Clinton, Obama, or Biden. Nobody's talked about that. Not the Washington Post, not the New York Times. That was fair. That was fair. No problem. Obviously, all their rulings, if you listen to the Post and the Times, and CNN and the networks, there's no problem with that. But all of a sudden, because this woman who's a federal judge in the District of Miami, she turns out to be a Trump-appointed judge, she can't be fair. They're attacking her on that. That's ridiculous. Another observation I want to make. Everybody who's been in this business as long as I have, both as an assistant attorney general prosecuting cases, and earlier my career as a law clerk to a federal judge, and then as a Supreme Court justice myself, knows there's something called prosecutorial discretion, which is not every case has to be brought. It's in the prosecutor's discretion on an individual matter whether or not to proceed in a case. I submit to you that if this prosecutor, Jack Smith, who has a whole history of prosecuting politically charged cases and going after political opponents of the establishment, if he wanted to embarrass or make a point about Donald Trump, he didn't have to get a 37-count indictment. He could have just as issued a special counsel's report, just the way Durham issued a special counsel's report saying, well, Trump did this wrong, he did that wrong, but it doesn't rise to a level of criminality because, after all, they did not prosecute Hillary Clinton, did they? And so this is a perfect example of what you call selective prosecution, a bias in the prosecutorial function. Next, they packed the indictment, Jesse, with 37 counts. It's overkill. It's what we call in the business packing or surplusage, totally unnecessary. They could have had a couple counts that would do the job just as well. Why do you do this? Because when the jury meets behind closed doors to deliberate, they say, well, we'll let him off the hook on 34 counts, but we'll kick him in the butt on 3 counts and convict him. And they think like they're doing something for the defendant. They're doing nothing for the defendant because all you need is one conviction to destroy a person's life, his reputation, expose him to jail, ruin his candidacy for office. So that's just a way of trying to bias and prejudice a jury in advance by saying, if he's been charged with all this, he's got to be guilty of something. And the last thing I want to say, Jesse, in my observations about this Trump indictment, is as follows. There's a great tradition that comes from the common law of England, and it's been established here in the United States of America. It's called jury nullification. And that is when a tremendous injustice is being done to a defendant, notwithstanding a technical violation, where both on the facts and the law you may have a technical violation, but it's clearly unfair, prejudicial, biased, and politically motivated, a jury can nullify that. It's called jury nullification, and they'll say, thank you very much, Judge, for your instructions on the law. Thank you very much for your prosecution of the case, Mr. Prosecutor, but we think this is so wrong, so unfair, so prejudicial that we are not going to convict. And I think this is a case that readies itself for real consideration by a jury of jury nullification. Comments on what I've just said, and then we can move on, Jesse.
Yeah, Your Honor, I think that you have a lot there, and I can't disagree with either one of your points. The only thing I could do is maybe amplify them. And I think that this Constitution, this great land that we live in, there's a presumption of innocence until proven guilty. Of course, under the left And even the mainstream press, when it comes to Republicans and Donald Trump or people they don't like or someone they've identified as the boogeyman, they are guilty and they have to somehow try and prove themselves innocent, and they never truly ever get their lives back. I think they're fighting with the wrong tiger this time. But certainly the left, I'm not surprised the left is attacking the judge. We've seen the left attack the judges here in the state of New York. The Chief Justice of the Court of Appeals was chased off the bench because she followed the rule of law, because she ruled against the gerrymandering redistricting that was overreached and violated the Voting Rights Act. She was attacked. She was drummed off the bench for the purpose of putting another lefty on that bench to secure their failed, illegal laws that they passed. This is not of a surprise. And when the scale, the logo or the seal of the Department of Justice is justice, and it's blindfolded, because justice is supposed to be blind, and it's supposed to be equal the scales of right and wrong. We don't have that now. It just seems, and you pointed this out in the first segment that we had before Councilwoman Vernikov was on, that you can say a lot about Donald Trump, and maybe his language is curse, of course, or maybe he speaks in everyday voice and such, but he never utilized the institutions of government, the Department of Justice or otherwise, to go after his political enemies. This is a blatant attempt of going after political enemies, political opponents, and it's got to stop. And if we are red, white, and blue Americans on the precipice of July 4th here in our country, we need to embrace what the freedoms and liberties and the principles of this country are. And I believe that there's a groundswell. There is that silent majority that's going to rise up. It's going to rise up in different forms. It's going to rise up in through consumer actions. It's going to rise up through the ballot box. But they're going to be taking their pound of flesh out here because they need to somehow make a demonstration of this has got to stop. We have to go back to normalcy. We need to have faith in that justice is blind, justice is balanced, and it's equal justice for all. That's not the situation here going under the Democratic leadership. And I think it is wrong, absolutely wrong, that the U.S. Attorney General and the President of the United States has been silent on this matter, has been ducking comments on this matter. We do know that even if they came out, they're going to be lying to the American people. But they need to say what they knew, how they knew it, and when they were advised of these things, or else it's going to be a problem with the credibility of this administration. And it already has.
No, I think that's exactly right. Going back to something you just raised, Jesse, they had a constitutional provision. The Democratic Party, in their redistricting efforts, tried to sabotage the Constitution of the state of New York. The Republican Party fought hard under the leadership of Ed Cox and John Faso and others and great lawyers, and they won all the way up the line. They won, and they found that there was a violation of the state constitution. A special master was appointed. Lines were drawn for congressional districts. Okay. And under the state constitution, as it's written, it's very, very clear that the state constitution provided that once the lines were drawn for the election, last time out, which is the 2022 election, that had to last for the rest of the decade. So what they did, as you correctly point out, is they drove a fine judge off the bench. There was a very common sense, very decent judge proposed, but he wasn't radical left, so they killed his nomination and denied him advice and consent of the state Senate. And he was a fair-minded judge. He wasn't political. And they put on somebody else who they thought was more to their liking. And now they're going forward, and they've sued again. And the case was just argued last week in the appellate division upstate, and it'll probably wind its way up to the Court of Appeals. And that's a big deal because it'll be another violation of the state constitution by the Democratic Party trying to fix the electoral process to deny Republicans representation in the Congress of the United States. Now, why is that important, Jesse? Going back to our theme, two-party government. If it wasn't for the Republicans being elected in New York State and in Florida, you would have the leadership of the United States House of Representatives in the hands of the Democratic Party, not the Republican Party. And if that were true, all the fact-finding, all the investigation by Chairman Comer of the House Oversight Committee looking at the Biden family influence peddling allegations would have been buried like everything else they've tried to bury. Now, I don't know if they're true and I don't know if they're false, but I do know everything's been buried up to this point. So you had Chairman Comer reaching out to really do something about this. And it's very, very important for the Republican Party to hold either the control of the House of Representatives or the United States Senate, because otherwise you can have a one-party dictatorship of the Democratic Party, and all the dirty deeds and all the conspiracies that are alleged against the Democratic Party and their principal players will be buried forever. And that's just wrong. That subverts democracy. That's the real subversion of democracy. What say you?
I completely agree. I mean, we will talk about all of this, I think, in the next segment, because I think we need to say, as you said, this is coming back again with us with redistricting. And there's another action that the legislature took, again, which is voter suppression, with moving local elections from odd years to even years, so they'd be with the president and with the governor. Basically, your town councilman is going to get lost with running the same year the president and the governor are. So I think it's important that these two issues we speak more about these two issues, because it directly affects all the voters outside of New York City. So I completely agree with you.
Okay. We're going to take a break. Kevin's giving us that sign. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be back in a few moments. Stay tuned for more interesting conversation.
This is Let the Record Show. This is Let the Record Show. Using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Jesse, when we took the break a few moments ago, we started to talk about this proposal that was just passed by the Democrat-controlled supermajority in the New York State legislature to fold in local elections outside of New York City, throughout the whole state of New York, into even number years, and the danger that is to having an effective two-party system. Would you please tell our listeners what this is all about?
Sure. What we're looking at here is that in odd year elections like 2023, local municipalities, townships, and counties have their local elections for county executive, for legislature, for town supervisors, for council members. What they want to do, and then right now, remember, let me just begin that New York has a law that says you have to have a full face ballot, meaning that when a voter walks in, they have to see the entire ballot in front of them so that they can have the opportunity to vote for each public office. What the Democrats want to do in the ultimate act of voter suppression is fold those local elections into even year elections, when normally, traditionally, we have our presidential, congressional elections in one cycle, like we did in 2020, and in 2022, when you have state elections, governor, a controller, attorney general, and so on and so forth. What happens there is that, number one, the ballot, I can just take a case in Suffolk County. The ballot on our paper ballots are going to be no longer full face. They may be, because of the number of office holders, both federal, state, and local, 2 pages. The people have a direct involvement, direct impact on your daily lives. They pick up your garbage. They establish your parks. They make sure that the public safety has the resources they need. They fund the cops. They build our local roads, and they maintain our quality of life initiatives like housing codes and such. All those local elections are going to be lost. Right now, there's voter fatigue. The ballots are so big that there's a 20 to 25% drop off from the top of the ticket to the back of the ticket.
And the other thing is, for most, my observation, Jesse, is also a lot of the times, if you go in there, you vote straight down the line. So if you're pulling down or marking it for Democrats, you generally go straight down the line. And if you go Republicans, you go straight down the line. But in these even year elections, you have much more of a draw of the Democratic base than you have of the Republican base. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And what happens here is that you're really suppressing the local vote for the individual office holders that truly make a difference in your daily life every day. They put up the stop signs, the speed signs and such. So what the Democrats do, they've seen that there's a resurgence of an attack, an assault on their policies. In fact, their policies in Albany are being used in local elections to demonstrate the differences between Republicans and Democrats. And now what they want to do is they want to suppress that vote. They want to suppress and end the two-party system, in local areas, Long Island and different communities in upstate New York, everywhere outside, ironically, the city of New York. So that's what we are now going to be fighting. And we were beginning this fight in 2021. The Democratic legislature does not care. They lost in the Court of Appeals with the redistricting. They're coming back again, and now they've rigged the judiciary in their favor. And what they're trying to do is suppress the vote of everyone that's outside of New York City. Or, ironically, they've also excluded all cities. So that means the city of Buffalo, the city up here and there of different urban centers. So they're not affected. So this is why, working with, myself, Chairman Cairo from Nassau County, my fellow chairs throughout the Republican chairs throughout the state of New York, are 62 all in total, with Chairman Cox of the New York State Republican Committee, we're going to go to court to defend the voices of suburbia, Long Island, upstate New Yorkers, farmers, small business owners, to make sure that these Albany Democrats, these progressive socialists, don't steal our communities, don't steal our vote, and don't suppress our vote here in vital local elections. And we're going to take them to court, and we feel that we're going to be successful, because what they're doing is this year we have a number of officials locally running for office. The legislation calls, like in this case, of county executive and various supervisors throughout our towns of Suffolk and in Nassau County. They will run for 4-year terms. What they're saying is that we're going to reduce that term by 1 year, make them run again for a 1-year term, and then get them onto the cycle that's on even years. That's the will of the people. The people are going to the ballot box this year, voting for a Suffolk County executive, a town supervisor, a town council member with 4-year terms. They want 4 years of these next representatives for stability, for consistency in their local.
It's also the county legislature as well. Isn't that correct, Jesse?
Absolutely, county legislature. But the county legislature's got 2 years. So what they're going to make them do, that is in 25, they're going to run for 1 year and then run again in 2026. Now, listen, this is all secular. Every attempt that the progressive Democrats have done to try and gerrymander elections and try and rig elections has blown up in their face. Regardless, though, this is more about making sure that the voices of local government, local issues, are not lost in the jet wash of a gubernatorial race or of a presidential race. Because the town supervisor that picks up your garbage, or the Suffolk County executive, or the county executive that makes sure you have enough cops on the street, is just important to you as the President of the United States and the governor.
Certainly, in terms of your quality of life, if you have a crazy left-wing county legislature and a crazy left-wing county executive, you can change the zoning code, and all of a sudden you've totally destroyed the quality of life in local communities.
What you will have, Your Honor, is what local control instead of local control. That's what they want. They wanted, remember back when they wanted to drop 800,000 new low-income units in Long Island and suburbia. That was their plan. They wanted the state to overrule local government. They failed in that attempt. So what do? They're now trying to eliminate or reduce the voices of local officials so they can't fight Albany overreach.
I agree with that. We have a few minutes left, Jesse. I want to raise with you what I call the China problem. China is an aggressive nation. It's a competitor. In many ways, they see themselves at war with us. They're doing everything possible to subvert the Pax Americana, the world peace maintained by stability of U.S. foreign policy and military strength. And they've moved into our hemisphere now. They have a spy station in Cuba. And I want you to talk about two things. One, the spy station in Cuba, and you, of course, know that coming from a Cuban family. And I want to also talk about this new revelations about the funding by the United States Treasury of this whole COVID research out in China itself at the Wuhan labs. So talk about those 2 points, please, in the last few minutes.
Sure. Most baby boomers remember the 13 days of October, where John F. Kennedy established a blockade around Cuba because the Soviet Union had placed missiles that could reach the United States as far as Florida and, of course, up into Washington, D.C. It was a tense moment, probably the beginning, the true beginning, the first volley shot of the Cold War. By the grace of God, we survived that through great leadership at that point by our U.S. military and John Kennedy, our President John Kennedy. Now what we found out is that Cuba has had, and again, with its partners of communism and socialism, China, a spy base in their midst that is collecting electronic signals from the United States. You know, this communism connection has got to stop. U.S. diplomacy with China is not working. You know, they claim, the Biden administration saying they've claimed that they've slowed down through diplomacy the reach of China into other nations, but I don't trust that to be true. I don't believe that China sees the Biden administration as anything other than one of appeasement and one that's weak. It's very much of a concern. And let's not forget that this is the same administration that allowed Chinese spy balloons to traverse the width of the United States, allowing it to hover over areas of U.S. nuclear missile silos, military bases and such, and without impunity, just let it go. Only until it completed its mission was it shot down over the Atlantic. This is a big problem. Additionally, the GAO, an independent federal agency, released this week, and the House Intelligence Committee has this, that U.S. taxpayer funds were directed for research before the pandemic to the Wuhan virus lab and the Wuhan University Academy of Military and Science, in excess of $1.4 million, and we're trying to get the exact number down. That's a direct contradiction to what everything the NIH has been saying and what the Biden administration has been saying, and it was a concern of the Trump administration. This is a huge mistake. And, of course, we have the Secretary of State this weekend, as we speak today, going to China, again, to try and maintain communications. From my point of view, when you take all three of these issues together and other ones, you know, its influence with the WHO, China's influence with the WHO, the UN not truly standing up to China and its aggressiveness, we are losing the diplomatic battle, and we're losing the battle of geography here with China. And you're right, Your Honor. China is at war with us. We are putting our hands, our leaders today in the U.S. Senate and the Biden White House are putting their head in the sands if they don't know or think or believe that we are at war with China right now. It's a different war.
And one that we're not ready to fight, and there's no leadership coming out of the White House. Well,
we're not ready to fight because there is no leadership. That's why. Exactly
right, Jesse. Well, Jesse, was a very quick hour. This has been Let the Record Show. I'm glad you're back with us. I'm glad you're feeling better. We need you, as I said to you in the text. This country absolutely needs you to voice these great concerns and exercise your leadership. This has been Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we look forward to speaking with you again next week. God bless you, and God bless your families. Thank you.
Let the Record Show is on the air.